You can't even pay your own rent. Della, what have you done with your life? Dad's voice slashed through the laughter like a knife. Mom joined in, smirking from across the polished mahogany table. You're nearly 30, and still living like a child. Maybe if you'd married someone successful, we wouldn't be embarrassed at family dinners. If your own family ever mocked you, stay till the end. This one's going to hit deep. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The room went quiet for a moment, the only sound being the soft clink of crystal glasses. Then my brother Nate laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. Come on, Mom. She's just figuring things out. Maybe she'll be useful by 40. His wife, Amber, giggled behind her wine glass, not even trying to hide her amusement. My fingers trembled beneath the white tablecloth, gripping the linen napkin so tight my knuckles went white. But I kept smiling. I kept my face calm and pleasant, because none of them knew what was coming. They thought I was broke, desperate, jobless. Just the quiet daughter who never lived up to the family's golden standards. I'd let them believe that lie for 2 whole years. While they mocked my little online projects, I'd been silently signing 6-figure contracts. Building something they couldn't even imagine in their corporate worlds. I owned something that could change all their lives with a single phone call. But tonight wasn't about money. Not really. Tonight was about truth. About finally letting them see who I'd become while they were too busy looking down to notice. The way my father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed over his expensive suit, watching me like I was some kind of failure, it burned deep in my chest. A fire that had been building for years. You've always been the disappointment, he said, his voice dropping to that soft, cutting tone he used when he really wanted to hurt someone. Your brother took risks. Built his consulting firm from nothing. You just played it safe and stayed poor. I looked up slowly, meeting his cold grey eyes. When I spoke, my voice didn't shake. Not even a tremor. Are you sure about that? The table fell completely silent. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Wine glasses paused in midair. Nate scoffed, breaking the tension with his usual arrogance. Oh, please, Della. What do you even do all day? You post motivational quotes on Instagram and call it work. I smiled then. A slow, quiet smile that made him pause, made his smirk falter just slightly. Funny thing about success, I said, letting each word land deliberately. It doesn't always announce itself with a brass band. Mom frowned, her perfectly penciled eyebrows drawing together. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned back in my chair, letting my words hang heavy in the candlelit air between us. It means the one you called useless might just be the reason this family still has a house to gather in tonight. Their laughter died instantly. The silence stretched like taffy, thick and uncomfortable. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, each second marking their growing confusion. Then Dad's voice dropped, suspicious and sharp. What do you mean by that, Della? I took a deep breath, feeling my heart pound but keeping my expression perfectly calm. Let's just say that business loan you took out last year? The one that saved your architecture firm? You might want to know who signed the final approval on the guarantee. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. And that's when the truth started cracking through their perfect little world like ice breaking on a frozen lake. Dad's hand froze around his scotch glass. What are you talking about? He demanded, his tone suddenly razor-sharp. Mom's practiced smile faltered. Even Nate stopped smirking for the first time all evening. For the first time in my entire life, I had their complete, undivided attention. And God, it felt powerful. I'm saying, I began slowly, deliberately, the bank didn't approve your loan because of your credit score, Dad. They approved it because someone vouched for you. Someone with enough verified business revenue and financial influence to guarantee the full amount. I paused, watching confusion twist across his weathered face. That someone was me. Nate laughed, but it was nervous now, uncertain. You? Della, you don't even have a real job. You work from your laptop in coffee shops. Yeah, I said, leaning forward slightly. That's what you've all believed, right? That my online business was just a cute little hobby. That my late nights meant nothing. You thought I was wasting my life while you were all building your real careers. He rolled his eyes dramatically. Stop pretending you're some secret millionaire, Della. This is embarrassing. I chuckled softly, the sound surprising even myself. Pretending? You really think a hobby pays for 2 office spaces in downtown Boston? The lease agreements alone would shock you. The room fell silent again, deeper this time. Mom blinked rapidly, trying to process what she'd just heard. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. You're lying, she finally whispered. You don't even own a car. That's because I don't need one, I said calmly, taking a sip of my water. I own 3 company vehicles and a small delivery fleet for the distribution side of my business. Why would I need a personal car when I have drivers? Dad's jaw tightened, his face going from pale to red. This is ridiculous, he snapped, slamming his hand on the table. What are you trying to prove here? I looked straight at him, holding his gaze without flinching. Nothing. You all spent years, years, calling me lazy, useless, and stupid. I stayed quiet because I didn't need your validation to build what I built. But tonight? Tonight I'm tired of being silent while you use me as your punching bag. Nate leaned forward, his voice dropping low and threatening. If you're so successful, where's the proof? Show us something real or stop wasting our time. I smiled. Funny you should ask. I reached into my purse, a designer bag they'd never noticed because they never really looked at me, and placed a set of silver keys on the table. They gleamed under the chandelier light. Everyone stared. The keys sat there like a grenade with the pin pulled. That's for the new house, I said simply. The one I just purchased last month. Mom blinked. A house. Correction, I said, tilting my head slightly. A lakefront estate. 6 bedrooms, private dock, mountain views. Paid in full, no mortgage. The closing was on the 15th. The color completely drained from her face as she looked at Dad, searching desperately for words, for some explanation that made sense. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Remember when you said no one in this family would ever depend on me? That I'd always be the one needing handouts? I let that hang in the air. Turns out you already have been depending on me. For over a year now. Nate's tone turned defensive, almost panicked. You expect us to believe this? You're making up stories just to embarrass us in our own home. I leaned in closer, my voice calm but cutting like a scalpel. You embarrassed me for years. Publicly. Constantly. At every holiday, every birthday, every single family gathering. You made me the punchline of every joke. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the table. But the funny thing about underdogs. I continued softly. We always rise right when you least expect it. Right when you've gotten comfortable thinking you're superior. Dad clenched his fists on the table. You're bluffing. This is some kind of sick game. Am I? I whispered. Check the name on your mortgage documents. The ones from the refinancing last spring. His face went ashen. Mom gasped quietly, her hand flying to cover her mouth as he fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. The silence grew thick enough to cut with a knife as he scrolled, his finger movements becoming more frantic. Then his eyes widened. His face went from red to white to grey. He looked up at me, and I saw it, shock, confusion, and something close to genuine fear in his eyes for the first time ever. Before he could speak, I said softly, You wanted to call me useless. So let's talk about who really owns this house you're sitting in right now. Dad's hand trembled as he held his phone, staring at the screen like it had just told him the world was ending. Then he looked up at me, his face completely drained of color. Your name, it's on the deed, he stammered. You're listed as co-owner. Since March. Mom's fork clattered onto her fine china plate, the sound sharp in the stunned silence. Nate's confident grin finally disappeared completely. Impossible, he whispered. How did you even get that kind of money? This house is worth over $2 million. I smiled faintly, taking another calm sip of water. While you were busy mocking me for not having a real job, I was building something actually real. The platform I started 3 years ago? It's now one of the top freelance marketplaces in North America. We crossed 2 million users last quarter. Mom blinked, her voice shaking. 2 million. Yeah, I said quietly. And every time someone books a project through the platform, I earn a percentage. Do the math on 2 million transactions, Mom. Even small percentages add up fast. Nate scoffed, desperate to find any foothold in this conversation. You're making this up, Della. You've always been dramatic. This is just another attention-seeking stunt. I didn't answer with words. Instead, I simply pulled out my phone, opened my primary banking app, and slid it across the polished table. The screen showed my checking account balance. Nate's jaw literally dropped when he saw the number. 7 figures. More zeros than he'd probably ever seen in a single account in his entire life. That's just one account, I added casually. There's also the business accounts, investment portfolios, and the real estate holdings. But who's counting? Dad's voice cracked. You? How could you keep this from us? We're your family. I met his eyes calmly, steadily. Because when I had nothing, you all laughed in my face. When I tried to explain my vision, you called it a joke. A pipe dream. You only cared about my success when you thought it might benefit you somehow. So I stopped trying to explain myself to people who had already decided I was worthless. The air in the dining room felt heavy, oppressive. The expensive meal they'd prepared suddenly seemed to lose all its appeal. Mom whispered, her voice breaking, "We were just trying to push you to do better." By calling me useless? I asked, my voice rising slightly for the first time. By comparing me to Nate every single day? By telling me I'd never amount to anything? By laughing when I talked about my dreams? I shook my head. You didn't push me, Mom. You crushed me. Over and over. But the funny thing is, the more you tried to crush me, the stronger I became. Every insult became fuel. Nate's wife Amber cleared her throat nervously. Okay, but why bring this up now? If you're doing so well, why embarrass your family like this? Why not just let it go? I turned toward her slowly. Because this dinner wasn't about family, Amber. This was a performance. Another opportunity to mock me in front of everyone, to make yourselves feel superior by tearing me down. You called me here specifically to humiliate me. I came here to end that pattern forever. Dad's eyes narrowed. And then what? What's your endgame here? I leaned forward, my tone steady but cold as ice. This game you all play, where you pretend to hold power over me, where you act like I should be grateful for your scraps of approval. As of today, that game is over. I'm not the weak one anymore. I never was. I was just smart enough to build my empire quietly while you were busy running your mouths. Nate crossed his arms defensively. You think money makes you better than us? No, I said, standing up from the table. But it makes me free from you. From your judgment. From your constant need to make me feel small so you can feel big. The table went dead silent. Only the ticking of that grandfather clock filled the space. I reached for my purse and started to walk toward the foyer when Mom's voice cracked behind me. Della, wait. Please. I turned slowly, meeting her teary eyes. You said I was a burden, I said softly. Now you're sitting in a house I helped save, eating food bought with money from my success, while calling me useless. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Just silence. I gave her a faint, sad smile. Dinner's over. I woke up the next morning to chaos on my phone. 17 missed calls from Mom. 8 from Dad. A string of texts from Nate that started reasonable and quickly devolved into anger. The last one read, "We need to meet. It's about the house. This isn't over." My stomach twisted into knots. I knew that tone. I'd heard it my whole life. Whenever they couldn't control me emotionally, they'd try to control me through other means. Usually money. Sometimes manipulation. This time felt different. More desperate. More dangerous. Sure enough, when I went downstairs to make coffee, there was a white envelope taped to my front door. Official looking. Heavy paper. My name printed in bold black letters across the front. My hands shook slightly as I tore it open. Inside was a legal document, a petition filed with the county courthouse. My eyes scanned the page, and my blood ran cold. My own family was suing me, claiming I'd fraudulently obtained partial ownership of their property. claiming undue influence, claiming I'd manipulated them during a vulnerable time. I laughed, but it was bitter, humorless. So this is what family means to them now. When love fails, try lawsuits. Just then, my phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I considered not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. Della, we didn't want to do this, he said, his voice dripping with fake concern. But you've left us no choice. You tricked us. You're trying to humiliate your own blood, and we can't let that stand. I didn't trick anyone, I said coldly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You just can't stand that I succeeded without your help, without your approval. That kills you, doesn't it? Then prove it in court, he snapped, the mask dropping. 2 weeks. Bring your evidence. Bring your fancy lawyers. Let's see if your little internet business is as legitimate as you claim. The line went dead. I stood there in my kitchen, staring at the legal papers, my hands actually shaking now. Not from fear, from complete disbelief. My own family was dragging me to court over a house I'd helped save from foreclosure. A house they'd stood in last night, eating my food, while calling me worthless. For the next 13 days, I barely slept. I gathered every document, every tax return, every wire transfer, every contract, every email exchange. My lawyer, Trevor, kept reassuring me. Della, they have no case. This is harassment, pure and simple. They're bluffing, hoping you'll settle just to make it go away. But I knew my family better than he did. They'd lie. They'd twist facts. They'd manipulate the narrative if it meant protecting their pride and their image. The day of the hearing arrived faster than I expected. As I entered the courthouse, my heels clicking on the marble floor, I saw them. Mom and Dad sitting together on a bench, dressed in their most conservative, respectable clothes. Nate beside them, wearing his expensive suit, looking smug as ever. He leaned over and whispered something to Dad that made them both smile. Actually smile, like this was all just a game to them. I took my seat beside Trevor, holding my composure together with pure willpower. He leaned over and whispered, "When it's our turn, don't speak unless I signal you. Let them bury themselves first. Trust me on this." The judge entered, an older woman with sharp eyes and silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. The hearing began. Nate's lawyer stood up dramatically, like this was a Broadway performance. "Your Honor, this woman deceived her elderly parents." "They're 62, I muttered, but Trevor squeezed my arm gently. "Manipulated their trust during a financial crisis, and illegally inserted herself into property ownership documents without proper consent or disclosure." Mom lowered her head, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Dad stared at the floor, the picture of a wounded father. It was a complete performance. An act. And they were good at it. The judge turned to me. "Miss Della Porter, how do you respond to these allegations?" "Not guilty, Your Honor," I said firmly. My voice didn't shake this time. Every single document was legally obtained, properly filed, and fully transparent. Their lawyer presented their evidence, printouts of text messages taken out of context, a carefully edited email thread, even a statement from a supposed financial advisor who'd never actually met me. I felt sick watching it unfold, but Trevor whispered, "Let them finish. They're about to make our job incredibly easy." Finally, it was our turn. Trevor stood up slowly, buttoned his suit jacket, and walked to the front of the courtroom with the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Your Honor," he said, his voice clear and measured, "my client legally owns her share of that property, and we can prove it in under 60 seconds. The courtroom went silent. My family's smug expressions began to crack. Trevor pulled out a manila folder, opened it deliberately, and revealed a document with the official county seal emblazoned across the top. "This," he said, holding it up, "is the original purchase deed and refinancing agreement. Full payment for the refinancing was made via verified wire transfer from my client's registered business account. The bank has confirmed this. The county has recorded it. It's public record." He turned toward my father. "Mr. Harold Porter, would you care to explain why you personally signed this acknowledgement letter, dated 8 months ago, thanking your daughter for saving your home from foreclosure?" Dad's face turned white as chalk. The judge's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Mr. Porter, did you sign this document?" she asked sharply. Dad stuttered, his usual confidence completely gone. I don't recall signing anything like that. Would you like to see the video evidence? Trevor interrupted smoothly, a slight smile playing at his lips. The entire courtroom erupted in whispers. Mom gasped audibly. Nate's face went from confident to panicked in seconds. Video? The judge asked, leaning forward with interest. Yes, Your Honor. Recorded at the bank during the signing. Standard procedure for transactions over $1 million. Trevor played the clip on a laptop connected to the courtroom's display system. There was my father, shaking my hand across a bank conference table, his voice clear as day. Thank you, Della. You saved us. I don't know what we would have done without you. The judge's expression went from curious to furious. So, Mr. Porter, you lied under oath today. Mom whispered desperately, Harold, say something. But he just sat there, frozen, caught completely in his own lie. Nate suddenly slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing in the courtroom. This doesn't prove anything. She could have coerced him. Trevor smiled wider. Oh, it proves everything, Mr. Porter. And here's the truly interesting part. He pulled out another document. Your brother's company email account shows he attempted to forge an ownership transfer document just 3 nights ago. The digital forensics are quite clear. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Nate's face turned bright red. You can't prove that, he shouted, standing up. Trevor calmly tapped the file. Already did. The metadata timestamps match perfectly with the fraudulent document you submitted to this court. You created it on your work computer and printed it at 11:47 p.m. last Thursday. The judge banged her gavel hard. Order. Mr. Porter, sit down immediately. She looked at the documents, her expression growing sterner with each passing second. Finally, she looked up. Case dismissed, she declared firmly. The property legally belongs to Miss Della Porter as co-owner, properly recorded and paid for. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of perjury and attempted fraud. She looked directly at my family. And I strongly suggest the rest of you leave this woman alone before you find yourselves in far more serious legal trouble. I exhaled slowly as the courtroom spun with whispers and shocked conversations. My parents couldn't even look at me. Nate stormed out, his face red with rage and humiliation, muttering curses under his breath. Outside, the afternoon sunlight hit my face, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, genuine freedom. Trevor turned to me, adjusting his briefcase. You handled that beautifully. Never seen someone stay that calm under pressure. I smiled faintly. No, I just finally stopped letting them control the story. I stopped playing by their rules. As I walked toward my car, a sleek grey Tesla I'd bought last year but never told them about, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. We just wanted you to come home. I stared at those words on the screen, feeling a complicated mix of emotions wash over me. Anger. Sadness. Relief. Finality. For just a moment, I remembered being 8 years old, desperately wanting their approval. Remembered being 16, crying in my room after Dad said I'd never be as smart as Nate. Remembered being 25, hearing Mom tell her friends I was still figuring things out with that pitying tone. I remembered all of it. Then I deleted the message without replying. Because some homes aren't worth returning to. Some families are toxic. Not because they don't love you, but because they love the idea of you staying small. Staying beneath them. Staying in a place where they can feel superior. That night at dinner, they'd called me useless. They'd laughed at my dreams, mocked my work, dismissed my worth. But today the world, and a courtroom full of witnesses, saw exactly who was really in control. I drove home to my lakefront estate, walked through the grand entrance, and looked out at the mountains reflected in the water. This was mine. Built with my own hands, my own vision, my own refusal to accept their limitations. My phone rang again. This time it was my assistant, calling about a major deal we'd just closed. $5 million. Our biggest contract yet. I answered with a smile. Tell them yes. Let's move forward. Because that's what I did now. I moved forward. Not backward toward people who needed me to fail so they could feel successful. Not toward a family that only wanted me around when they needed something. Forward. Always forward. And as the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, I realized something profound. I'd spent years trying to prove my worth to people who were never going to see it. Now I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I was free. And that, more than any amount of money, any courtroom victory, any moment of vindication, that freedom was priceless.